Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Doctoral Journey with Derek. I am your host, Dr. Derek Robinson, and I welcome you back. It's been a minute, been kind of working on some things, so I've been out of pocket for a while, but now I'm back, and we'll be back with our podcast and things like that. Before we begin, I want to put a plug on April 13th. We will have a live webinar, so check out the webpage for that. Check out my sites or however you access me for Ambitions of a Writer, the webinar free for everybody, where we talk about the 5 mindsets of prolific writers. Make sure you're there. Would love to have you all in attendance, so you can register easy on the webpage. Once again, you can find me on any place you get this access. You can get my webpage, and I'll make sure I drop the link here, so you'll have that. Today, we're going to talk about one of the things that we will address in more depth on the podcast webinar that we will do on April 13th. And that is developing a research productivity plan. The way I have it set up, it looks like a conveyor belt with different buckets and baskets along the way. And we'll talk about a way to stay productive in the research writing plan. Of course, you know that writing is a lot more than the actual process of touching keys on a keyboard. You have to have gathered literature, you have to organize and develop that literature, you have to have a theming plan and everything before you actually get down to the writing. And even once you're done with the writing, there's a step after that, because you just can't give a first draft. So it's proofing and things you can do after that. All of that is handled in Mastering the Literature Review, which is a course that I teach, and also a coaching program that I have, a coaching curriculum. So you can access all of that there. But once again, those are the things that we'll talk about at the webinar. But also today, we're going to start touching on this productivity plan. So I want you to envision a conveyor belt where you have 5 conveyor buckets that one dumps to the other one dumps it to another, and the other one dumps it to that one, and you just keep on going. And on this conveyor belt are 5 buckets that you keep rotating, you keep in motion. So the 5 productivity buckets are this. If you're ready, let's go. The first one is information gathering. That is bucket number 1, where we actually gather the information for a research project. So we'll talk about everything involved with that. The second is blueprinting and outlining. Blueprinting and outlining your research is an important part of the writing process. So that is a bucket in and of itself. So you go from information gathering to the bucket of blueprinting. From the bucket of blueprinting, you move to the third conveyor belt bucket, and that is analysis and writing. Now, once you've gone through gathering information, moving it over into the blueprinting and outlining, you then move it to analysis and writing. Now you're writing. And once you've completed that process, you move it to the submission bucket. And this is a bucket that contains all of the projects that you have submitted to a respective peer-reviewed journal. And then you're still not done. Because if you know anything about the submission to peer-reviewed journals, no one comes through unscathed. You will get a revise and resubmit if you're accepted. Now you're in the revision stage. If you're in the revision stage, whether you have been rejected or you're revise and resubmit, because hopefully, if they have rejected your manuscript, they should have given you some advice going forward and the reason why you were rejected. And you can take that advice and then do your revisions and then find another home for your work. So those are the 5 buckets. Once again, information gathering, blueprinting and outlining, analysis and writing, submissions, and then revisions as your 5 buckets on this conveyor belt of your productivity plan. So let's jump into number 1, and that is information gathering. Now, in information gathering, you have essentially 5 tasks. You have gathering your literature, which you should be accessing your university online library somewhere. You're paying a part of your tuition for it. So make sure you use that first. And hopefully you have an interlibrary loan system, which even if your university does not house that particular article, it should be easy to get. You should not be paying for an article, but you've already paid for it through your university library system. So utilize that method to gather your research articles. Now, once you have gathered literature that you believe is perfect for what you're doing, and once again, topic development, understanding your topic is key to information gathering, which is a part of the course on Mastering Literature Review, and something we'll talk about on the April 13th webinar. But once you've gathered your literature, you should have electronic folders, maybe Google Drive, OneDrive, whatever system you use, electronic folders where you actually move those articles into folders by their topics. So now you're organized. So you have a healthy amount of articles in each topic area. Now, if you're doing this for a journal submission, you're probably going to have about 30 to 40 articles in total, and that's on the low end. So if you got 5 particular subjects or topics, having at least 8 to 10 in each area is a good start. Now, once you do that, you should also, in this information gathering stage, have developed a reference page. So every article that you deem worthy of keeping and organizing, if it goes into a folder, it should go into a reference page where you keep an APA format reference Word document of all the articles in alpha order that you would possibly use. You can always refine that and curve it to what you actually use in the writing, but you should have it at this stage. Having it at a later stage could be torture for you. And I've had people who have did all this wonderful work and forgot to do their references, and now they have to go back and find all the references for all of their work. Torture. Just do it up front and you have it there ready. And then you can, once you gather the literature, put them in their respective topics, reference pages, all of the information, you should start the part of creating your article cards, which is simply going through each article and strategically taking notes. All of this is in the Mastering the Literature Review course that's available. But we dive deeper into this. I'm telling you the article cards are where you go right now. So you have those article cards that you develop. Now, if you got about 40 articles and you do about 2 articles a day, and I say 2 no more than 3, it's going to take you about 20 days of going at reading and note-taking, things like that, for you to complete your article cards. So automatically, this stage alone is a minimum of 20 days. I give yourself 30, but at least a minimum of 20 days to get through 40 articles, and maybe 25 days if you're in the 50 range. So having all of that done, the next step before you leave out of this particular stage on this particular project is your potential journal targets. You should be able to narrow to 3 target journals you want to submit to that align with your work. You know the purpose of their research. You've studied some of the editor's work as well and see how it aligns to your topic. But all of this goes into an information gathering folder, and in your particular project folder inside of that will have all of this information. So inside the information gathering folder, you'll have a separate topic or project folder, and inside of that project folder you'll have topics per the topic that you're searching on. You'll also have your literature in there, your reference page in there, your article cards in there, things like that. Now imagine if you have 3 to 4 projects going on right now. That means you have inside of that particular folder at least 3 topics or projects that you're working on, and inside of each of those you'll have your articles, your reference page, your article cards, and some notes about the journal that you want to submit to for that particular project. Now, that's folder number 1. Folder number 2 in this hopper is your blueprinting and outlining stage. Once you've done all of the information in the gathering stage, where you've got your article cards, you've got your reference page, you've got all your articles together, you copy and cut and move that particular project over into a new folder called the blueprint outline stage. Here is where you develop your study plan. So now that you've got all this information, you've got your literature organized, you've got your topic pretty much under control, you now begin to blueprint how this is going to be written. So you develop a study plan. You figure out what type of article it's going to be. Will it be a qualitative article, quantitative article, literature review, theoretical paper? You decide all of that with the information you have right now in this folder. You then develop a detailed outline, particularly of your literature. Now that you've been able to have all your literature carded, you then create themes of the literature, which means you take those statements in there, you move from significant statements to elements to meaning units to themes. And we go deeper in on this in the Mastering Literature Review course and coaching program that we have at myadvantage.org. So you have all of this information, you've got the outline for it, you can do the IRB if necessary, get that on the way, but doing all of this work will help you get the IRB going. So if you have to submit the IRB, do that. And then you develop your writing plan. Now that you have this information together, now that it's outlined, now that you've submitted for an IRB and you're waiting on approval for that, now you develop the writing plan. Now, the length this will take truly is the length of getting you through IRB if you have to do an IRB. But please note, if you're going to do an IRB, do it large enough so that it's not tied to one article. You don't want to do one IRB per article. You'll be working forever. So keep that in mind as you're moving forward in the blueprinting stage. So developing your writing plan will be according to that. But if you have a strong outline and you know where you're going, the actual writing process will be very easy. So I'm going to give this particular section anywhere from 30 to 40 days. Now that's takes into account if you have an IRB process that's a little more longer, you're going to have to make revisions, things like that. Just know that when you get revisions back from the IRB committee, you turn that around in one day. The longer you wait, the longer you get away from it, then you get away from having everything else come through. Now, if you have to turn it back in, the faster you turn it in, the more seriously IRB committee will take you. And then they'll work through getting the work ready for you to actually move on. So, in this entire process, the blueprinting and outlining stage should last about 30 days, 30 to 40 days. Now you have a writing plan. So now you take this project folder out of the blueprinting and writing folder and you move it to the next bucket, which is now the analysis and writing stage. So once your IRB is approved, if you're doing it that route and you're cleared to conduct research, collect and analyze your data, writing your literature review at that moment, writing the front matter of your work so that you have at least your background to study, your purpose, problem, all of that kind of stuff underway. You've got your literature pretty much done. You have your methodology started, and now you're at the point where you're gathering information and you're analyzing that information. So your writing plan is taking place. You just don't wait on IRB, you write everything else. In this stage, you're analyzing your literature, you're analyzing your data, but you're also writing up the front matter. So I give this particular time 15 to 20 days. If you get on a good enough writing plan where you have an outline, you can write in any section you wish and keep moving. All of this is explained in the Mastering the Literature Review course. I'm saying that a lot because that's a very good course that you want to pay attention to. So you have that information ready for you to go. You're writing every day. You're going toward your developmental blueprint, and you're working that outline to death. So now you've done that. Before you move to the next folder, get someone to proof your work. Of course, you take it through Grammarly or whatever else you're doing, and you should have the premium plan for Grammarly. If not, get it. But you take it through that, of course, but then you have a peer or two sit and read your work. See if it works for them. And take whatever they give you and whatever Grammarly gives you to proof and refine the work so that it's ready for submission. Now, you take that work now that it's moving in from the analysis and writing stage, the next bucket it goes into is submission. Now, once you submit it, you can't do anything else to it. So here you make sure the final paper going through a peer review of your own, and then you submit the work. You follow all of the directions that the journal guidelines tell you to submit that work. So you submit the work then, and now you're on the waiting game. Now you're on their time. So while you're on their time, it's time to go back to other projects and get that worked out. So now you can go and develop your other projects or whatever projects you were also working along the process. You're moving that along. Once you get information from them, whether it's a rejection or a R&R or revise and resubmit, that goes into the revisions folder. It goes from the submission folder to the revisions folder. It should not stay in the revisions folder for longer than 2 weeks. Try as hard as you can. One, you need a revision checklist. I provide that in my course, but you need some type of table where everything that they've said for you to do, you have it there, and you also have what you've done to address everything that they've wanted addressed. So that's your revision checklist. You will turn that in as well. But also then you turn in the revised work to be done. But make sure you have all of that information there for them, and you get that thing turned around. So whatever time they give you, let's say they give you 30 days to get it done in 15. That way you're on it and it doesn't burden you from your other projects. So as soon as you get it back, develop your plan to address it, go and address it, try to do half the time that they said to give it back to them. You get it done in half that time. Then you keep it moving, because now you're taking a new project back from gathering literature and you're working it through the process as well. So keep in mind, you don't stop. You don't stop and wait on submissions to be returned to you. You don't stop and wait on revisions to be returned to you. Understanding you could go through this revision and submission process or dance. You could go through that for a year. I've had projects where I've gone through revision and submission for a year and a half. It was a point where I forgot what the project was about. So you'll go through that process, and that could be anywhere from 3 to 6 months to a year to a year and a half. I've heard of people going through revisions for a couple years because of just things that happen with the journal. So don't be amazed that that's a process. But what you should never do is stop your work because you are waiting on the journal to get back to you. No, it's on to the next project. So always keep, and this is how I'm going to conclude this, always keep as your goals 2 to 4 works in each bucket, so you can stay busy and stay moving. Realizing that the less projects you're working on, the faster you can get them out. So you don't want to crowd yourself where you're just never getting things done and you're overwhelmed and you start procrastinating. Keep it slim, but keep it full of something. So once one project goes out, one project comes in. So to keep in that mind, if one goes out, one comes in. And prefer that you do this at the submission stage because you can't control anything after that. So one goes out, one comes in. Special time you probably need for all of this to completion, from coming in to completion, it's probably going to be anywhere from 60 to 90 days. So relax, but realize don't fall off. It could take 60 to 90 days to get everything through a cycle. And once again, the lesser your projects, the faster your output. So on the 60 days is when you're probably working one project at a time, which means you have one project in each bucket. Along with knowing your writing energy, which is something we talk about and we'll be talking about at the webinar, knowing your projects and knowing what you've got on time to do and having a plan for that, a reading plan, a writing plan, some discipline as to how you're going to do this work, and make it realistic. You can get through this writing process very easy, but what you'll also develop by developing this bucket plan and this productivity plan is you'll have something that can constantly be in the works so that you can produce 4 to 6 to 8 manuscripts that you're submitting every year. You're not in charge of whether they get published or not, or when they get published. You're in charge of when they get out of your computer and into a manuscript's hand or a journal's hands. That's what you control. So with that said, I want to remind you again that on April 13th, we have this webinar, Ambitions of a Writer, where I share with you the 5 mindsets of prolific writers. In addition to that, on the myadvantage.org website, we have the Mastering the Literature Review course and coaching program. I have a 90-day curriculum that if you want to adhere and actually work through some of these in the research productivity plan, we can do that and I can coach you through that process. Sometimes you need to have someone to just cheer you on and help you stay focused and motivated to do this work. So I have a 90-day program that'll get you through, and you'll have something ready to submit. So with that said, I will let you go. It's a pleasure talking to you as well, and I hope to get back to the actual lives so that we can talk together and interact. But you'll find this information as a whole, but also broken up into segments where we can then dive deeper. See you later. Bye.